Good evening, good evening. If everyone could find a seat, we're about to kick things off. Thank you, thank you. Well, hello everyone. My name is Carrie Ebersol Singh, and I'm the president of Michigan Political History Society. And we could not be more thrilled to be a co-host of tonight's event on the People's Attorney. For those that are less familiar with the Michigan Political History Society, we're an organization that works to provide opportunities to meet and hear from those that have helped create Michigan's political history. And hopefully engage those that are creating it today so they can learn from the lessons of the past to formulate visions for the future. So I encourage you to check us out on the web. You can become members. And we also will be holding another book signing later in November. So please join us on Facebook or check us out online. So with that, I just want to, on behalf of our organization, also thank Mr. Kelley. He's been an incredible support to MPHS, and we're very, very fortunate to have him as a partner tonight. So without further ado, my responsibility is to please introduce Jane Hayner, the press director at Wayne State University.
Thank you so much. Wayne State University Press is getting ready to celebrate its 75th year of operations in 2016. We are really Detroit's publishing house. We are also an academic publisher with a very broad list and a variety of scholarly topics and areas of discipline. The book that we're celebrating tonight is actually in our Painted Turtles series, which is a trade imprint that is of regional topics of interest, historical topics of interest for a general audience. So we couldn't be more pleased to have the book in that series. My responsibility and only duty tonight is to be grateful to those putting on this event. So thank you so much for this and for the opportunity for this book to reach another audience. And to introduce the man who really made this project happen with us. So Jack Lessenberry is the head of Wayne State University's journalism faculty and teacher, which I sometimes get to guest lecture in his classes, which is one of my favorite things to do, and WUOFM's senior political analyst, where he delivers daily essays and commentary on important Michigan issues. In 2011, he brought me here to Lansing, which I think I almost want to say was my first official time in Lansing, dare I say that, where I got to go to Jack's office and meet Frank Kelley, and hear about this book that was in process and that it would find a terrific home, potentially with Wayne State University Press. So happily, the result a couple of years later is now The People's Lawyer, The Life and Times of Frank J. Kelley, the nation's longest-serving Attorney General, which Jack co-authored, and which we are so proud to have published. So please welcome up to the stage Jack Lessenberry.
Jane's too modest. It's been one of my great thrills over the last 10 years. You've been there 10 years now? Amazing. To see how Jane and her wonderful staff have revitalized the press, have turned it into a very multi-variety publisher, and that she had the vision and the wisdom to see this was a book they should do. Actually, like most of the women in here, she was probably just charmed by Frank Kelley, but can't blame her one bit. But everybody from the press has just been absolutely wonderful to work with, and including Kathy Wildfong, our main editor, who is here tonight, Emily Nowak, who's actually selling the books and trying to make the place solvent. We appreciate it. So, I also have the pleasure of, I was thinking about Frank, and Frank is a man who, while he only has 3 biological kids, has thousands of spiritual children in all sorts of walks of life. Everybody knows, of course, that the way you got your start in politics in this state, if you're a Democrat, was to work for Frank Kelley. Whether as his driver or as press secretary or an assistant attorney general or all 3. But he also, of course, had a second life, and he founded with Dennis Cawthorn, Kelley Cawthorn. And he was a mentor to a lot of folks there, including the man who I'm about to introduce, David Gregory, who succeeded him as a partner. Frank is now retired, at least on paper. But David Gregory is a principal in the firm, and he's taking it to the next level, to the 21st century. As I often observe kind of woefully, his main three characteristics, in contrast to me, is that he's younger, much better looking, and taller. But I think we should thank him and thank Kelley Cawthorn for being generous enough to make this event possible, to do this for Frank, and also to bring together such a wonderful set of people who've been active in politics and public life and government all over the state. And I want to applaud all of you. Thank you very much, Mr. Gregory.
Thank you, Jack. Thank you all for being here. Tonight's guest is the son of the rough and tumble Prohibition-era streets of Detroit, who later became a small-town lawyer in the quaint northern outpost of Alpena. At age 37, he was an unlikely choice to become Michigan's 50th Attorney General. 37 years later, and 11 statewide elections later, he retired as America's longest-serving state Attorney General. He's mingled with presidents, advised governors, argued cases before the United States Supreme Court, appeared on national television, and mentored hundreds of aspiring young public servants. But he made his reputation fighting for the little guy. More importantly, he reshaped the nature of his office, not merely to serve the narrow interests of government, but the greater public good. He later co-founded the Lansing-based firm that still proudly bears his name. On behalf of my colleagues at Kelley Cawthorn, which include his co-founder Dennis Cawthorn, who sends his regrets he can't be here tonight, his son Chase is here, but Dennis is attending the 50th reunion of some obscure law firm in Boston tonight. But please join me in welcoming the Eternal General for a panel discussion of his new book, The People's Lawyer. Ladies and gentlemen, the one, the only, Frank J. Kelley.
I'd like to remind you all that under the Constitution, Frank is legally entitled to serve one more term. And we're working out the details. I, of course, will be Minister of Propaganda. We've asked Senator Gretchen Whitmer to write a whole lot of orders that we can just distribute on the first day and reverse a lot of things. But we'll let you know.
Well, Jack, I want to start with you. You spent a lot of time with Mr. Kelley over the last several years writing this book. I'm sure you got to know him in a way that a lot of people haven't.
And he's paid me to keep quiet.
Well, what is the thing that surprised you most about Mr. Kelley that you learned over these several years?
I think what surprised me most, it's a great question, is how many different facets to this man there are, how many different interests he's had, how many lives he's lived, the people he's known. If you haven't read the book, you'll have a lot of surprise. I had no idea. I knew a little bit. I'd known him slightly for years and years, as every journalist in the state did, but that, as you say, he sort of grew up in one of the best speakeasies in Detroit. I didn't know that he has vast numbers of friends in the show business community, that he had as a roommate for a while in college a pimply-faced kid named Steve Allen, who Frank gave a radio job to that he didn't want, and that he is so revered by so many different people and respected in so many walks of life. I guess that would be it.
Mr. Kelley, and you know, I've always called you Mr. Kelley, and you've never once said, call me Frank. So, Mr. Kelley.
You said I was supposed to be Mr. Kelley because you never told him to call you Frank.
Mr. Kelley, why now? Why did you write this book?
Well, there's two reasons. And there's a few of my American-Irish friends here, and not everybody knows that among the Irish, if you are an artistic person, if you're a poet or a writer, and you have published something in your lifetime in Ireland, you're a hero. It's like being a Ford medal winner. And for example, they followed up with reason. If you are an artist or a poet published in Ireland. You pay no income taxes all of your life. Did you know that? John Huston moved there because he was a creative person. He saved about $8 million in taxes. John Huston was an Irish American.
So I guess the short answer is tax evasion.
Tax evasion.
No, I wouldn't tax that. That's the one reason. The second reason and main reason is that I read a book when I was a young lawyer in Detroit working for some very fine lawyers. First year I was a lawyer. And I think it was called Country Lawyer. And it was a romantic idea of this, written by the son of his father in a small Midwestern town as a lawyer at the turn of the last century, and how important he was, and what a wonderful life he had as a country lawyer. Well, my selfish interest was added to that. There were two ways to be a trial lawyer when I was a young lawyer. You could either go in the prosecutor's office in Detroit and get batted around by the best criminal lawyers in town for about 3 years. And most of the great trial lawyers came out of that milieu of being an assistant prosecutor. And you could do it that way. Or the other way was to go to a small town where you got on the docket real quick, suing such important cases as farmers arguing over a bale of hay or something. And then, but you would get into court, and all these older lawyers in the country would just bat you around until you were crazy. You didn't know what to have to do. So you would learn you could learn in the criminal courts, you could learn in Alpena. So I learned in Alpena, but I read this book, and I always made up my mind, if I had any luck in life, my father wanted me to be in public life, and I did to be true to him. And I had the opportunity to be attorney general and a lot of other things. But the main thing is, I wrote this book so somebody else could read my book and hopefully be inspired to get into public life. Because I think that we've got this terrible problem in this country today of dividedness and so on, and different opposing views and no co-op. And Abraham Lincoln or George Washington, anybody that writes about a democracy, you can't have a democracy. The democracy presupposes one thing. It's a civilized government. It has to be compromised. If you don't have compromise, you can't have a democracy. And we're not doing that anymore. But it takes well-intentioned people in public service who care. I don't care what side you're on, but to try to be compromised. And so I think that one of my favorite quotes is from a man, the philosophical educator. And one of his quote was,
Horace Mann?
Horace Mann, be afraid to die until you have obtained a victory for humanity. And I've been in public life all my life, and I feel so rich because of it, and so like, it was just wonderful. And I'm trying to inspire other people to get into it because it's a rewarding life. And that's, I wrote the book to try to get people to at least consider a career in public life. And like my friend Bernie Klein.
You know, in fact, I have to say that when Frank told me this, he said he wanted some young person to pick this book up in a library and say, you know what, this guy came from modest means. He ended up doing this. I can too. I didn't have the heart to tell him, Frank, today kids read their phones. But sure enough, I get a call, a notification from a young man at Grand Valley who said, I've just read this book. I'm blown away. I want to be Frank Kelley. Can I meet him? I thought that was, you know, as usual, Frank's right. But if you don't mind, I want to add, my favorite quote is one from his father, Frank's father. Frank's father said to him, son, if you want to be in public service, and I encourage you to be, just remember this. They stoned Moses, crucified Christ, and shot Lincoln. What do you think your chances are?
Well, Jack, you mentioned Mr. Kelley's father, and you alluded to something before. What was the Linden Hunt and Fish Club?
Linden Hunt and Fish Club, that was an establishment that I desperately wish I could go to. It was, this was, his father had a very his father, Frank E. Kelley, was a very law-abiding man, upstanding citizen, but like all sensible people and all Irishmen, he thought making a law against drinking was like making a law against breathing. And so he had this wonderful establishment, and there was a sort of a tame, ordinary part where you could bring your family, and then there was the sort of inner sanctum. It was a very respected speakeasy where everybody from Ty Cobb to Babe Ruth to Kennesaw Mountain Landis showed up on occasion. And as Frank said, prior to the end of Prohibition, he didn't know there was any Great Depression.
Mr. Kelley, how did your father inspire you to go into public service?
Well, there again, it's my friends were American Irish here, and some of my Jewish friends. If you come from persecuted people, there's a tendency if you have the opportunity after being persecuted to get into public service and in order to enhance freedom and protect your people and enhance the opportunities. And people who are persecuted tend to do that. And so among the Irish and other cultures, public service is always considered a high calling. And my dad always preached that. And and I love my father, and still I love him, and whatever he wanted, I did. And I'm the luckiest guy in the world. I had the exact life my father wanted me to live, but I had a wonderful life. I've had a happy time until I had this tragedy lately with my loss. But other than that, everybody knows me. I've had a happy life. I had the right people to fight. I had great fights, and I had great battles as a lawyer, and I wound up a survivor. So it's just wonderful. I'm a public service guy. I was programmed by my father to do that. And anybody I know that's in public service, they may feel self-satisfied, but I know they're satisfied.
You know, Mr. Kelley, you mentioned something. You had a lot of great battles as Attorney General with the utilities and with Blue Cross and scam artists.
There was a comma there.
But later, when you went into private practice, a lot of those, not the scam artists, but Blue Cross and the utilities hired you. Now, some people might have thought that looked unseemly, but maybe did that grow out of some advice your father gave you at one point?
Well, it's real simple. You know, I wound up a lot of people that I used to fight hired me, and I said, fine, you can hire me, but you think all I'm going to tell you is how to be good. You know? And it was really good getting paid to tell them how to be good, you know. And that's what we did. And Dave was there to see it, and my good partner, Dennis Cawthorn. And what we would do is we would tell a particular client, you know, you can do things properly and bring credit to yourself and get some success and not have to do anything by cutting wages or taking advantage of situations. And so I always preached the good, and they paid me for it. And
Do you think it was a little bit like FDR appointing Joe Kennedy head of the Securities and Exchange Commission?
A little bit. You know, but I knew the Kennedy, and when Franklin Roosevelt appointed Joe Kennedy to be the head of the Securities and Exchange Commission, he says, the reason I'm appointing you, Joe, is you know every trick in the book, you know how to stop him. So, and he went in and he stopped him. And that was Joe Kennedy Sr. And it was interesting.
So your book opens up with a pretty compelling scene. I believe it's early 1962. You'd just been named Attorney General of the state of Michigan by your good friend, and I think a law school classmate, John Swainson.
No, it wasn't a classmate,
Okay.
friend.
John Swainson. And you're summoned to Washington. I think that's the name of the chapter by one Robert F. Kennedy, who was then the U.S. Attorney General. And he gave you a bit of advice. Maybe you could tell us a little bit about that scene and what he told you.
Well, you have to buy the book, because
Just give him a teaser.
the first chapter in the book is about, I was Attorney General for maybe 10 days, and I get a call right from Washington from Bobby Kennedy personally, coming down and see him. And I went, and the first chapter is my official visit to Bobby Kennedy in Washington and how we got along, and it's quite interesting.
There was no discussion of Marilyn Monroe.
No, but Bobby Kennedy, you know that I don't care how you feel about, I'm too old to worry about how you feel about a particular out situation, but I just care about public service. And Joseph Kennedy could not be a bad man because every one of his progeny, and then